Black Locust and Mulberry, and then again between Mulberry and the north end of Sixth Street. We have Fifth Street from the highway to Black Locust, which is paved, but it's among the most traveled streets in town, and it's in pretty bad shape, and so that'll get one coat. And then the other part of Fifth Street is between Black Locust and Mulberry, and then we have we have 4 blocks so far, and then we go over to the west side and what we refer to as West Third, which is on the map, Cottonwood Wash Road, and we have another block. So together we have 5 blocks. Each one of them is about 400 feet. So we're talking, 2,000 feet of chip sealing total. And then before that, they have to prepare the gravel roads, get everything ready. So that's another 10 or 15,000. I don't know. If we went to the private sector, it'd be about 15,000, 10 to 15,000. But with the county, I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know what their method is yet. And so that's why I want to get the iron in the fire. And so that's the first phase. So chip sealing would be the first phase of the project, and then the next thing would be the maintenance. And that hasn't been scoped out yet. So right now I'm looking at 27,000 for maintenance. So, with regards to the grant, the way I look at it is the town would be purchasing road work this year at 50% discount at half price, right? So that's what the grant does for you.
I'm all for this.
Yeah, me too. And Michael, either I didn't hear you or you didn't mention the Mulberry, the one north of the community center.
Oh yeah, Mulberry. So 6 block. I forgot that one. Yeah. So
Okay.
it's almost 2,500 feet.
And so the one this was kind of listed in the reverse order of what we talked about, because we talked about the school route being first and then the community center being second. If we run out of money or they run out of time or whatever, the priority would be from around the school to above the community center to those gap roads. It kind of working.
Well, at this point, I'm not looking at priorities, right? Because we don't know, but the gap roads in East Bluff, 5th, 6th, and Mulberry have been on the list since 2018. So
the matches are coming out of 2 separate funds for the school and for the residential areas. So I don't think
we don't know that.
We don't know for sure. We don't have that grant. That we don't have the school grant. It was just that if it seems to me anyway, and Michael, I think you agree that if it's a school route, and the reason we want to do that one is because they put the school there, creates a lot of dust for the playground and the school, and they can't plow it. So when I call them up and say, hey, we need to plow in Bluff, they can't do anything that's not paved, and chip sealing they will. They will plow chip sealing. So we can't do maintenance on that school road to get them to their back area, and we can't get up to the water tanks and whatnot unless we chip seal that one. But we're hoping the school or that fund that Michael's found will pay for that, but we don't have that solid at all.
Yeah. When we get, anybody else got anything to say?
I do. Hold on. Right now, I've heard at least 3 occasions where we're at least 3 of us talking. So let the person talking finish before somebody jumps in, because we're going to have a terrible recording otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael, go first, and then Aaron.
Yeah, just to address the school bus route, all those roads I mentioned will get done, right? It's going to get done by the county, or they're going to get done in the private sector. So there isn't a priority. With regards to the school route funds, once we'll separate 3rd Street West into billing. And when we get that invoice, we'll put that in. I'll make a request to the board chairman that, they pay for that out of they provide the matching grant out of that fund. If that doesn't work, it's okay. We'll have enough money to get it done, So, that's further down the road, which if the school route funds will chip in on that work. Okay?
Okay, Aaron, I think you had a question.
So in terms of the financials, two questions. So first, with that 3rd Street West, we would have the money no matter what, whether we get that SRS grant or not. Is that
Right,
correct?
right.
And then
Right.
second, for the financials, the maintenance or the prep that needs to happen prior to the chip sealing, that also would already be included in the 55 and 55 match, correct? Or is that an additional fee that we would need
No,
to?
no, that's included. Yeah.
Okay.
Every piece of road work for fiscal year 2023 is included in that grant, right? 55,000. Town's going to put up, so we have 110,000 right now. When I do my budget estimating based on last autumn's prices, private sector prices that I got for the gap roads here in East Bluff, I'm looking at 94,000.
Great.
94,000. I'm sorry, 94,000 total. 64. I think it's I forget. 62 for chip sealing, and 27 for maintenance, something like that. It's around the mid 90s right now. But
Perfect.
yeah, but I haven't gotten any feedback on pricing from anyone. This is we've had the pandemic, we've had inflation, and so forth and so on. So
Okay.
yeah, I just want to say that it's in the interest of the town if the county will do this work for us. That's the way to go. The chip sealing, yeah. Okay.
So when Linda and I met with Michael, Lou, we didn't include you because you had met with Michael before and 3 of us would have made it a meeting. And because numbers are not my strong point, Michael went over the numbers again. And because we aren't voting, we'll have this on the agenda for next Tuesday. I'll send out Michael's little sheet here with all the figures
Okay.
and see how it breaks down. But the
Okay.
bottom line that I think we need to look at is when we get to the start of the fiscal year 2024, after doing all this work, making the loan payment back to the town, paying the driver's alert signs, the discretionary fund, the signage work that gets done by Helgerson Property, we still would start 2024 with approximately $41,000 in the pot. So the second thing that I think is important for people to know before we vote is that Michael has made as much of a commitment as anybody can make to stay with this project for that year. As long as we don't need an engineer, and of course, excluding anything that comes up that is unexpected. But so we have Michael managing, and that's a great thing. And the third thing is that if all hell breaks loose and we're just out of money for some reason, we have a flood, we have to dump money into roads, we can stop the project. So it's piece by piece, we'll get the invoice, send it off to get reimbursed, pay it. So I think we're in good shape.
Yeah. Right now I'm looking at things, the hard part is arranging for the work and then make sure it gets done. And, right now I don't see the town really spending 55,000. It could end up the town will, spend 50,000 and the grant will only be for 50,000, right? So we'll see how it goes. We don't know yet. If we go into the private sector, though, I just want to remind everyone, you're going to have to hire an engineer. And, that's going to be like a $7,000 fee.
And Michael, we're not going to go down this engineer route today because
Okay.
you're on a time schedule. Molly's on a time schedule. We're on a schedule.
Okay.
That's for another discussion. But thank you.
All right.
So it's on for a vote Tuesday.
Yeah. So
All right.
I'll see you guys next Tuesday then. All
Yeah,
right.
thanks a lot, Michael.
And,
Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right,
and
bye.
after that, you'll go to the county or you'll talk with the county. I mean, it seems like we have a consensus.
Yeah, I'll be, working to move things along, while I'm
Okay.
away. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll
Well,
talk,
let me,
once Erin and I get this thing together, I'll send it, we'll send it to Todd and then I'll call him up the next day, something like that. The
okay.
other thing I can do is contact Kelly Fearson, and, just let him know what we're doing and I'll inquire about the school funds, okay?
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good.
Okay, then we'll move to number one, which is now number 2, the transportation planning grant. Hi, Molly. You're muted.
Good to see everybody.
Good to see you.
See you.
Well, why don't you tell us what your thoughts are here?
Yeah, so I think first is to just, I don't know if it requires a vote next week or if that can happen in this session, but just to approve the formation of an active transportation plan committee under the town of Bluff. And then the second one is this UDOT or the Department of Transportation. Let me pull up my Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. We want to apply for that grant. I have some resources pulled up that kind of show the flow chart of what's required, which is actually not very much. And so it's about 60 weeks away if we want to apply for the grant. It doesn't seem like a huge lift, but it may clash with the timeline of establishing a committee if you want the committee to be the ones to apply for the grant and vote on it and then create the budget to propose what we want to get from the grant. So I think we just have to decide if we do want to create the committee, how soon we'd be able to apply for the grant if that's something that we want to do. So I guess my question to you is, do you want me to go through the grant really quickly so you just have an idea of what it is? Or do we want to discuss more about the active transportation committee?
I guess what I'd like, and I don't know what other people want, I'd like to start with what is the grant, the actual grant. You're correct. We can't vote in this meeting. It would have to go on next Tuesday's meeting, assuming everybody's got their questions answered. So maybe you could start with that. Molly, is everybody okay with that, or is there another way you want to go?
The only thing I would say is I want to make sure everybody's clear that there are 3 things in the pot. The active transportation plan is from UDOT. They require it, and all of the things, anytime they talk about this town has this active transportation plan in place, and then they go on to tell what other grants they have. They insist on that. So anytime we're doing anything with UDOT, we've got to have that one in place. This grant that's available is from DOT, not UDOT, but DOT. And so we can work on the active transportation plan even after we get the application in for the grant. And then there was the second one that I sent out yesterday that is, it was called the Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program. And they were completely focused on people new to the DOT and tribal entities, rural governments, and nonprofits in rural areas. So that one, I haven't pulled up that application, but that's another one that we can apply for that's due in October. I think we should apply for both of those because you don't know which one we'll get. But we can apply for those, get that grant going, and then get the committee to make sure that we have a plan in place. Those awards won't come till next spring.
Okay, can I ask a clarifying question? If there are
Yes.
if there are 3 pieces we're talking about, and I think we did this with the roads, and I got confused about what's a gap road, what's a numbered road. Let's define a term for each of these 3, because That third one is a US DOT, correct?
Both of the grants are DOT. So US DOT, they call themselves DOT. When you look at their websites and stuff, they say DOT is doing such and such.
Okay, so define the first grant. The active transportation plan is through Utah Department of Transportation.
And that's not a grant.
It's not a grant.
That's a plan.
That's a
That's
status.
that little guy right there that is the
That-
checklist. And they want that, basically that's the map showing where you want the active transportation plan, where you want bicycles, walkers to go.
Well, let me just get the term straight. So
Okay.
that is through UDOT.
Right.
Okay, then the second one is through the US DOT, the Department of Trans, which is important because frequently we say DOT referring to UDOT. So then what's the name of that? Is there a name that's connected to the second one?
It's Safe Streets and Roads for All. And then the number is SS4A.
Like Safe Streets for All,
Yeah.
SS4A.
The number 4, yes. And then that's the one that has come into their attention because of so many people getting hit on highways, especially in rural areas across the country, and it really spiked with COVID. So why it all spiked, we don't need to wonder about, but there is a lot of funding so that we can get these types of projects to get pedestrians and bicycles safe and away from the heavy truck traffic is what they're after on that one.
All right, and then the third one is the Reconnecting the Communities pilot program. And that's through the US DOT.
Right.
And so Molly, the first question that you had was whether or not the town would support forming a committee. Is that right?
Correct.
So would the committee then be looking at all three of these possible components?
I think the committee would decide whether to apply for all three of these. I think immediately we could, if apply for this Safe Streets and Roads for All. I actually have the flow chart up that they provide, and it seems like a pretty simple application. So I do think that the active transportation committee should be really focused on delivering this active transportation plan. And I see any grant that they would apply for as part of either creating the plan or implementing the plan.
I agree with Molly.
And so I'm hoping this committee would be very focused on this deliverable of creating the active transportation plan outlined by UDOT, because that's what Michael and Heidi, or Jared and Heidi, recommended to us in order to move forward and other things.
Mayor?
Grant?
Hey, I think for this project that this is exactly the way we should proceed. I think we should plan on hiring a planner for Bluff, which is a planning exercise. And, it may be that our committee has some capacity to do the planning, but I'd prefer a professional planner to do this master plan. I talked to a guy in Salt Lake City 4 years ago that Heidi knows. And they had just introduced the Main Street Toolbox into UDOT's thing. And he was really, really excited about the opportunity to put their Main Street program into action in Bluff. So I feel like we need to hire a planner as we go along.
So part of applying for the Safe Streets and Roads for All, and potentially I have to look closer at this Reconnecting Communities grant program, it would be funding to hire a planner. But we definitely have to have like a base. It's going to be a couple steps. Like we probably have to have an initial community meeting just to get like public feedback before we hire a planner. Because we'd have to submit just like a rough idea of a map for like moving forward on an action plan. But part of applying for these grants would be hiring a planner, the funding to hire a planner.
Molly, yeah, I have a question for you, Molly. So when you looked at that application for the Safe Streets for All, can we apply for that and say that our community is working on the workshops to get the
Yeah, so let me, can I share my screen really quickly?
So, Molly, can you do that sentence again? Can we do what?
Can we apply for the Safe Streets for All grant, and then in that grant say that we're working as a community to develop an active transportation plan with UDOT? Like, can we put that in the grant, or do we have to have that active transportation plan before we apply?
We don't have to have it before we apply because there's two paths in the grant. One is if you don't have an action plan yet and you need to create one. And the other path is if you already have an action plan and you need to implement the plan, like pay for specific projects.
And I think what I understood in that training for the implementation plan is it's kind of like, shovel ready. And we need the easements set up. We need to know where it's going to go. We need the council approval. We need all that stuff, which is what the planning part will pay for. But I think in the application, we can say that if we can get a committee set up, we can get the committee set up and say that we're working on this piece of it with UDOT.
Mm-hmm.
And I just would like to remind everyone that when you're talking about the active transportation plan, we've actually worked with UDOT on a number of projects and we don't have that plans. I think for the bigger projects, I would agree that you have to have a plan, but we've been working with them now for almost 4 years with no active transportation plan. But for the bigger projects, we're definitely going to need to do something.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, but UDOT has said if we haven't actually really applied, to my knowledge, applied for any money directly from UDOT to do any like Main Street thing.
No, that's actually not correct. We actually have a $5,000 grant from UDOT for our driver feedback signs.
Okay.
And a couple of other projects that they've helped with
Cool.
money. So, I'm just saying that the smaller projects we've been working on, and there's been funding through UDOT, but this bigger piece. So why don't you go ahead, Molly, with what you're saying?
Okay, so I'll just show really quickly it makes it pretty clear this flow chart is asking, so do we have an existing action plan? The answer would be no. So that would include a Vision Zero plan, a safety plan, some work with tribal agencies, and a local road safety plan. So we don't have this yet. So our path here would be to apply for an action plan grant. And then if we want to apply for the action plan grant, we just learn more basics about the grant. So they have some resources for us. We have to decide as an entity who will apply. So I imagine if we create this active transportation committee, who will apply, the representing body would be the town of Bluff. We'd have to use our SAM number to apply. And then we would choose our planning approach. So we'd have to develop a new plan because we don't have one yet. And then we'd have to identify a funding match source. So first we'd have to outline what we think it would cost us to develop a plan and then commit as a town to a share of at least 20%. Matching funds include cash or in kind. Let's see. And then there's some forms that we'd have to fill out that I have here, which are just kind of these law forms. It includes like a narrative that you'd have to write. And it kind of gives you an outline of a budget to help you get to your number. This is and then a project narrative file.
I have a question sometime, y'all, just about the size of the grant.
Mm-hmm.
Should I ask that now?
So there is no minimum, like that you have to apply. That there is no like. There's a large pot of money, and basically you define your budget and make your request, and there's no minimum amount that you have to apply for.
Wonderful. I thought I'd heard there was a minimum of 250, and I was really worried about that. So that's great, Molly. Thank you.
It's an estimate, but our town wouldn't need to apply for that much.
Yeah, it's just on the grant. It says that they expect that grant applications will be from 200 to $1 million, but they say there's no minimum and no maximum.
That makes me really happy because I did not want to borrow 200 for planning. So I'm really excited about this news.
So I wanted to clarify something that you said earlier, Bran, about working with UDOT and hiring a planner and whatnot. If we apply for this and we don't get it, or in the meantime, UDOT jumps on and is ready to get after it, then they have planners and they have engineers and they have people on their staff. But there's a big state, they're stretched thin. And that's why if we can go through the federal dollars, it would be better.
I agree, Lynn. And we'll just have to see how things unfold. But conceptually, I like this idea of getting an active transportation board set up. It'll help us for future grants and these grants, and we can go ahead and get going on this Main Street. So I'm excited by this, y'all.
Molly, I wonder if we could ask UDOT for an estimate of how much it would cost to plan it, because somebody's got to work with UDOT for their easements, because most of it will probably be on their land.
Heidi will know because she talked to the planner and they had a number in mind 3 years ago. So Heidi knows how much that planning costs.
How much it would cost? Yeah, sorry. How much it would cost? How much to get like the loop around?
I think this speaks to what Aaron was asking last night during the meeting of like, just when you're project planning, like what's the overall steps that you have to take? Who do you need to talk to? How many hours? Like, what are we actually going to ask for? So I think we'd be able to answer these questions after we'd vote on creating an active transportation committee, because then I'd have permission, or Luann and I, or however the town wanted to structure it, would have permission to reach out to Heidi and Jared and have an initial meeting and say, we want to create an active transportation plan following this UDOT checklist. We're thinking that one way to achieve this is to apply for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. One, does that make sense? And two, could you help us understand more specifics about what it would take, cost of hiring a planner, stuff like that. But I wouldn't be able to move forward, or I guess whoever, not just me, asking those questions without knowing we had consent from the town to reach out and ask those questions.
There's another thing that we heard last night that I want to bring into this conversation. Linda's economic group is working on signage, countywide signage, point of sale signage, a 3-tier signage thing. And I'm concerned about over signage. That's one of my main concerns in my life, is over signage. And so I'd like for us, as we move forward as as our town committee, to try to keep abreast with Linda's group, so that maybe we could end up with the right signs in San Juan County without some sign company trying to just populate us with too many signs. I'm concerned about too many signs, not the right color. So it's a really big deal to me, signage. Just FYI for you guys.
So Brant, then if you're that concerned, it would probably be really helpful if you joined one of those conversations with Linda, because there's some very clear guidelines about color from UDOT. There's very clear direction from UDOT as to what those signs could look like. And as you heard Linda say last night, that was a concern that she also expressed in the meeting, is we as a town will decide how many signs, where they're placed, and what they're going to reference as a point of interest. It is not where San Juan County Economic Development comes in and says, Bluff, you're going to put these signs up, here's 200. That is not what's going to happen. And so I think if you want to join into that conversation, that's a good place to go, is that wayfinding.
Mayor, you don't really have any idea how far this can go, and I disagree with what you just said. And it's a concern of mine. So, you know, you can ask me to join a committee or not. I'm expressing this to this group right now.
And I don't disagree with you, but I think if you want more information, that's a good place to go to get it, because it's pretty clear what those guidelines are. Linda, is there anything that I didn't state correctly?
What you said is correct. This is the reason I applied for this committee, or volunteered to be on the committee that picks signs. We've already looked at a really basic list. There were very few actual Bluff signs, and there are some that we're not going to need. I mean, if UDOT has Sand Island covered, then it doesn't need another sign. So,
I'm not just worried about Bluff. I'm worried about the county. You know, I'm worried about a sign that says this is, Bears Ears 2 in the wrong place. So it's a bigger picture than just Bluff for me. I'm just saying, as a town, knowing that we have signage, knowing that the county has signage, let's figure out a way to make it work for the town and the county.
right.
So Linda, so we can move off of this topic, could you find that list and send it to everybody as to what the choices were that people threw out, so that Brant can be reassured that the signage is not overly done?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, going back to the issue here on the active transportation plan.
Yeah, and I have about 5 minutes before my next meeting, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Were there any questions about how to move forward? And in my mind, it's voting on the active transportation plan committee and then having a follow-up meeting, maybe the next work session, to understand who we need to reach out to and how to get an application started for the Safe Streets and Roads for All.
Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Is there any work that the CERD has done that provides any documents that would be useful to this proposed active transportation committee?
Yes, I mean, we have kind of a project narrative already that we could probably use for the state Safe Streets and Roads for All. We have just like a rough draft map that doesn't have to be finalized, but could give an idea of a way that we could move forward. We've already have a lot of support from the school district and other nonprofits and community groups, and that's actually part of some of the requirements of these grants. So I think there's some work that we could build off from that group.
If I could see a document like that sometime between now and the meeting on Tuesday, that would be very useful, Molly. I'm very much in favor of an active transportation committee. I don't think we're going to get off the dime here without a committee, and it'd be an ad hoc committee and with a deliverable, I believe, the way it's been expressed. Thank you.
So I agree with Jim that this is a good idea. One concern, and maybe this is just inadvertent, at the start of your presentation, you said the committee would vote on things. We've had quite a few committees, plus planning and zoning, and they make recommendations to the council. They're not these separate committees that vote on things. They vote on recommendations, especially when there's money involved, and that's another big question. is a budgeting question, but that's my main thing, that a committee would, in my opinion, would make recommendations to the council who would vote on things.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would probably be the structure.
Yeah, and I would just like to add to what you said about getting support from the community. There's been a lot of support. The mission just had another opportunity for a $10,000 grant that could have been used to like even link the mission back into town, something like that. If we had the active transportation plan in place and we had the UDOT easements okay, we could have applied for something like that. So there's some other money. But this particular one, the Safe Streets for All, they really, really, really want us to partner with somebody else. If somebody else in the area will say, yes, this is our plan too, we really want it. So I think we need to think about pulling those partners in. Maybe San Juan County, Elaine Gisler has been very involved. She really wants to hook bigger part, but if we had this part in, that would, you know, help them along. They really, the mission wants to connect. They would like to, they're nonprofit. The Fort would like to be involved, and if they're a nonprofit. So if we could look at some of those as partners, it would make our case stronger. I don't know how we would do the school district possibly. I thought about UDB. Maybe they would partner with us. There is kind of a short timeline for this one, but they really would like to see other ones. Maybe Friends of Cedar Mesa could jump on as a partner, but need to kind of think about anybody like that that we'd be willing to partner with to say, let's get this done. Let's get a grant for this stretch of trail.
Okay, so I'm gonna interject here. Molly's gonna need to jump off. So it sounds to me like we have a consensus for Tuesday night to be able to say we're all in support of a committee that reports back to the council for decision making. Money at this point is not being discussed. We won't know that until the committee is formed, meets, and comes back. Is that correct?
I'll second that, Mayor.
No voting, but it'll be on the agenda. Molly, if you could just be available Tuesday for a minute in case there is an additional question.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, Molly. Thanks, Luann.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. That kind of ties into the number 3, the budget. Let me just. So why don't we talk a little bit about that and then take a 5-minute break? How does that sound? So one of the things that I wanted to discuss on the budget is in the 2023 budget, which we're barely into, and revisions don't need to be made or amendments don't need to be made until we're closing in on the end of the 2023 fiscal year. But there are a couple things I'd like folks to keep in mind when we start talking about something like the active transportation plan, getting a planner for that, looking at strategic planning, both for the CCC projects and for the town of Bluff projects, is we have a couple of unknowns that we've got to factor in and keep in mind. And one unknown is the threat of imminent or pending litigation. And so that is a complete unknown in terms of whether we need to be setting something aside more than what we have set aside for legal fees, or whether it's just not a non sequitur, there's no issue. So that's one piece I'd like to have everybody keep in their mind when we're discussing the needs that we have in 2023. The second thing that Linda pointed out when she and Michael and I met, and again, Lou, I apologize for not letting you know we were meeting. In my mind, I know you'd already met with Michael and you understood the numbers. But one thing Linda pointed out was that Michael had made an assumption that we would have roughly $55,000 coming in the 2023 fiscal year. Now, that had been a good assumption that second year of road money, pre and start of COVID. But in the 2022 budget, we actually brought in $42,000 in revenue from Class C money. And when the three of us met, where you could see the differential in Michael's mind and in Linda's mind was that the June disbursement in 2022 and in 2021 that goes into 2022 actually gets made in July. So if you're looking at the figures that are provided by the Class C fund people, that takes in actually about 13 months of revenue, not the 12 months. And so the difference between the 55 and the 40, roughly 42, was that $11,000. So that's why in my mind, I couldn't reconcile things. That's why I needed to have Michael and Linda in the same room with me. So that's my long version of saying we don't know what we're going to take in 2023. And I'm a little nervous about overcommitting to something. We don't need to amend the budget at all until we get further into the year. Then the other piece of it that we need to factor in is the cost on the CCC. Right now, Jim and Brand are doing a really good job of talking to UDB about how we're going to kick the bucket and move on this and get some funding for the fire suppression and look at future grant writing. I sat in on a little bit of the conversation yesterday. But again, right now we're laying out a couple $1,000s a month for an empty building that we cannot use. And we just had a text from James saying he wanted to alert us that the propane tanks are down to 30%. And while we don't need to fill them today, that is a cost that's going to be coming up again before the weather gets too cold. So I just wanted to get that on everyone's radar that 2023, I mean, we're doing fine. We've got money. I don't expect to see any changes, but we do have a couple of unknowns. So that's kind of what
I'll
yeah.
second that, Mayor.
Thanks. Jim, yes.
Do we have an actual set aside, an actual account or sub account of some kind for litigation?
We just have it lumped as attorney's fees. And yes, it's in the budget.
Okay, just the attorney's fees is an estimate of what we need. And okay, gotcha.
And I think Linda has her hand up, and I think, Linda, don't we have the attorney's fees broken down by the CCC and then the town?
Right, they're separated. We also, this last year, have taken in 3 new employees, and they're the total, I mean, we have them worked into the budget, but that's a cost of around $80,000 that we didn't have a year ago. And so, that has changed our budget fees somewhat.
So this is just more of a, kind of a reminder for everyone in the future when we're looking at adding something like the active transportation plan, and then down the road, do we need to hire a planner? What do we do with strategic planning, which we'll get to? Any questions, or do you want to just take a little break here and come back in about 5 or 10 minutes?
We could take a little break.
Okay, so
The next thing is the practice call. So everybody ought to bring their phone.
okay, good suggestion. It's 9:52. Let's come back at 10. Okay. It is 10 o'clock exactly. Are we all back on? Jim and Craig, are you recording?
Yeah, I never turned the recorder off, I'm afraid.
Well, I can tell you some horror stories about that one, so I don't know if we need to clean up that 10 minutes in between or not, huh?
Oh no, I'm totally safe. It's good.
I guess
No,
you could
no.
stop it. You could stop that one and then start a new one.
If he didn't say anything tacky or rude, we're good.
Just keep it on. Okay.
Yeah, we can just let people know that there's a 10
Good luck on that.
Well, all right, so Lou, can I ask you to kind of walk us through this, how we do this with the call, how we would try a practice one today?
Yes. That'd be great. So it's called the Dialer app. And so hopefully you've gotten it on your phone. And I will put this up here. You can see it's this one right here. And let's see, right here in the corner. And it's called the Dialer app when you search for it in the App Store. But when you see it on your screen, it's Gets WEPS is how they call it. And it's just a little red screen. It's really bright. You can put it wherever you want. So when you make a test call, you just hit that. And what I'll do is I'll call you, Ann.
Okay.
And actually, let me do the test call, and I'll do it with the sound up so you can hear what you do. So on my selection, when you open your app, there's a test call at the top. That big blue spot is the test call. So I'm going to hit that, and then you have a choice of just Gets or WEPS and Gets or just WEPS, whatever. Anyway, the combination or Gets or WEPS. And so what she said to do is just always hit the WEPS and the Gets because that will route it wherever the available lines are. So you hit that, and I call that test call. It gives me the option to go ahead and hit the call, like any call. So I'm going to call that, turn my speaker on. And what it's doing is ringing through, and then it puts all of my PIN numbers and everything right into the call. Let's see if it went through. Okay, I had to try again. I don't know what happened. So.
Must have been busy.
Yeah, I'm going to try just the straight Gets. Last night it went through just perfectly. Okay, this is using straight Gets. And so they're going to go ahead and signal it through.
You are using Gets Verizon. Thank you for calling. calling the GETS and WPS familiarization line. We recommend that you make periodic test calls to this line so you become proficient with the GETS and WPS dialing procedures. If you have any questions or need assistance, please contact the GETS and WPS User Assistance Center by calling 1-800-818-4387. Thank you and goodbye.
Okay, so last night I tried it with the WEPS and the GETS combination and it went through just fine. Today I tried it and something was amiss, but the GETS went through just fine. So if you say I want to make a call, I have put in a couple of calls. I tried the town office last night as well, so then that added it to my frequently called contact list. And then now we're dealing with Price dispatch and says San Juan County. So I have in mind the Price dispatch number so that if I need to call them directly, I can just come to my app. I can just hit them and it puts all the numbers in. Because what I find is when you're in an adrenaline rush time, you forget half of what you always know. You forget your password. You forget, where's my phone? How do I even get into my phone? So that's what this is for, is to let people get through this whole system in an easier fashion. So I can just pull this up, find that app, hit them, and it will all call right through if all the lines are tied up. If they're not tied up, I just call them directly without this system. But they don't care if we use this. It routes it through and it's a fast and easy way to get to whoever we need to call.
So
And Anthony has this number and the right people have this set up.
Right.
So we're safe. This sounds good, Lou. Thank you for setting this up.
And so
Luann,
Mhm.
can you show me what the icon, what it looks like, the app on your phone?
Yeah, let me pull up what it looks like on the App Store. I think that might be. So you hit search and then dialer app.
Dialer app.
It's called PTS Dialer. And
TPS dialer.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to do a sign language. P like Paul, T like Tom, S like system. So priority telephone system. So PTS dialer. And so if you do here's what it looks like when I search that on the App Store. And I just put in dialer. But if you put in PTS dialer, it'll be the top one. And it's the red one that says GETS and WEPS. And then on mine, I just open it, but you can get it. It's free. But when you get that app on your phone, you've got to put your PIN in. So, and I've got the list of PINs, and that's what the other thing I want to get transferred to Erin so that, whatever we need to do, so she knows how to get in or whatever. So, but that, you don't have to have the app on your phone. You can just use your PIN number and dial it from a landline. You can do whatever. You can use whatever phone. You can pull that little card out and put it in, or you can put the number in your phone and go to that password PIN number, enter it from there. You don't have to have the app, but it's definitely a time saver and keeps you from mixing up numbers of when you're dialing it. Okay, so one other thing that I just wanted to say is that all of us on the council have it. Erin as the manager, Anthony, Dawn, Kathy, several of the EMTs and the fire department and whoever else. It's real easy to add people. So if somebody comes on, we need to add it. But they all are connected. And like I say, hopefully we never need it. We've never needed it before. But like when 9/11 happened, and everybody was on their phones calling everybody, it locked up the whole system. So that's what triggered this, is that if something happens and nobody can get out anywhere, the people that need to get out can use this system.
And so Lou, I have the app and I've got my little card that has the PIN number in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try it later this afternoon, but are you around in case I can't figure out how to set up the PIN number? I hadn't gotten around to. Okay.
Yeah.
I just tried to do it and it's technically impossible for me to figure out.
Yeah, and that's where the app is nice, because once you have that all in there, it's kind of just does it for you.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? Oh, and is Erin on does she
Yeah.
have a card too?
Yep, she's got one. And then the other thing is that there was a delay from July 10th or something right to like the 20th or 22nd. They thought they'd have it, and then they had another delay to the 27th, and then it came live like the 29th. So I had to re-register and get through a different site. So it's login.gov is what it is. So we have a login.gov access spot where we go in, and then that accesses all of these users and stuff. So anyway, that all just came live like just a couple days ago. Erin?
So I'd set up the app and I did the test call and it asked me to enter my PIN and all that good stuff. But what I'm seeing under the settings is that we have to like enter our PIN once we get the app on our phone. When that is entered, will we need to enter the PIN number every time we make a call?
No,
No.
it will do it. That's what it does, is it takes it into the app and then it knows. And then it just dials it. So you can hit a contact. It'll put in the number to the priority call people. It will put your PIN number in, and then it'll put the call through. So it does all three of those steps just by tapping the app.
But it is not set up until the PIN number is not set up until we enter it into the app. So that's the step that has to be done.
Right. I can't do that for everybody's card. You have to do that on each phone, has to do that independently.
So would it be okay, Lou, if anybody's stuck, if they reach out to you or to Erin once she knows how to do it? And
Yep, you bet.
okay, and Linda
And
doesn't.
then if anybody has it, if you have it, and she said come to a meeting and call each other. I did that test call, but do you want to try to call me right now in the meeting and see if you can get it to work? Or do you want to do some more testing?
I want to get mine.
So I could just enter your phone number into the test call number space on the app and give you a call using my PIN automatically with this app. Is that correct?
Right.
So I could do that right now if you want to.
Okay, why don't we try it?
What's your phone number?
435-459-0435.
Okay. Okay. I don't know how to make a call. I'll figure it out. Somebody else go ahead. I'm figuring this out.
Yeah, and like if you don't like if you want to use a landline, like from the office at Town of Bluff, if you're in the office, same thing. You just pick it up, use that the number to call, which is on your card, where you call to place a gets call, and you put that number in. So we should probably have that number somewhere near the phone. So if there's an emergency and you can't get out through that one, you can put that number there, gets priority call PIN number, and then you call that number, and then you do have to enter the PIN, and then you have to enter the number that you want to dial. So there's that 3-step process. But if all the lines are blocked up and you can't get anything through, it will be better than that.
Well, I'll work on getting mine set up today because I've had the card. I just haven't focused on it. So I'll get mine set up with help. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And you can, and like I say, if you have the app on your phone, once you call somebody, they put it in your frequently called numbers. So that's why I put the Town of Bluff in there and then Price Dispatch. But whoever you would call, if you want to put Anthony's cell phone in or the Lodge cell phone or whoever you would call to let somebody know something is what you want to put in there because then those show up. You can delete them, but it's also nice to have them right there handy. So call away and call me or call Aaron at the office or whatever to give it a shot.
Sounds good. Thanks. Looks like we're on a roll here to get that done. Okay, let's move to number 5, strategic long and short-term planning. I know we've had some discussions about this both in the design review team had it, the committee there had it, and we've been having it. And now that we have a manager on board, I think probably we're all in agreement that we should be looking at what short-term goals are, and then the longer-term goals like 5 years, 10 years, whatever the time frames are. And I'm not sure what Lisa Springmeyer's availability is going to be like. And I know Jim's been trying to reach out to her. I think Aaron made a very good observation that this planning can't be done in just like a 2-minute discussion. We need to probably devote a couple of hours to sitting down and figuring out what the goals are, what's long, what's short, what's really short. And if we could get a strategic planner to come in and do a session or two, that would be, I think, really helpful. Someone who's not one of us, partly because it allows each of us to focus on what we think we need, rather than one of us having to facilitate it. And also, I think it kind of levels the playing field for all of us. So thoughts?
Mayor, I think if we hired Lisa to come down, we could do 2 strategic plans. We could do one for the town. While she's here, we could do one for the CCC. So that would be my idea.
Yeah, that's probably the best thing. We need one for the town and we need one for the CCC. These are not things that are done very quickly, as you point out. A good facilitator is going to be able to elicit the ideas for goals from each of us. And that's one of the reasons why it's best to have someone from the outside. Anyone on the inside is, it just becomes it doesn't go forward very easily. But a good facilitator will take those goals as a brainstorming and then refine those down to actual doable targets and so forth. So that's something I think we need for the town, and we really badly need it for the CCC right now. We're kind of not dead in the water, but we're spinning around quite a bit, and I'm starting to see some of the same things with the town. Not really spinning around, but these are not very efficient discussions without a strategic plan and without goals and target dates and so forth, in my view. So, that's my experience. Thank you.
Aaron?
I would second that, Jim. I think our biggest hurdle is an inability to set actionable items with strict deadlines that need to be set. And so, being able to have those discussions is really important, but, assigning it to people, having the accountability and the follow through is absolutely critical. I'd also want to ask, clearly we have a general plan that we can kind of work off of. It's a little bit of a backbone to help point us in the right direction. But I know, general plans are usually a little bit more fluffy. It's the feel good. It's the, this is what we want the community to be. So I think it's really important to highlight to both ourselves and the community why these long-term strategic plans are different and how they're different, and why they're so crucial in actually getting, the actual work done. And then finally, to follow up on that, I would pose it to the council to just think about what community involvement or listening sessions might be a part of this as well. you all are here to represent the community, but there might be items that even the 6 of us might miss in terms of what the community would like to see 5-10 years down the road. I think the short term, we know what we need to get done. It's been, these are the things that, as Jim said, kind of spin. But in terms of 5-10 years down the line, you all might, still be serving on the council, but, there might be another set of folks. And so it needs to be something that is truly, this foundation that you set in order to have everyone moving forward in the same direction.
At the risk of a little slight disagreement, I think that we've made a lot of progress in 4 years, and I don't see us as really spinning. I think that it takes a while to build the basis to be able to do long-term planning. And one of the things we have to add into this is planning and zoning has on their agenda for the year looking at the general plan, which includes a part of strategic planning and fine-tuning that general plan. So we'll need to be sure that we include planning and zoning in this, since the general plan is something they're looking at too. Grant?
I agree with you. We've made some major progress. I mean, it's amazing when you look back how much progress we have made. But we made that progress because the goals were pretty straightforward, and everyone agreed on a lot of the goals that we needed. And as we go forward and those goals have been achieved, for example, they were really straight. We needed infrastructure and so forth. But now we're getting into areas like what Molly presented this morning, where we're actually trying to develop what we want to do at our meeting, and the discussions start moving into broader areas that would be eliminated, I think, by a good strategic planning process. So these discussions become less efficient, I think, without that planning process having been done, is all I'm saying. No, I don't think we're spinning as a town. I think the DRC is spinning a little bit, but I think the town is going forward well. We're talking about the things we should be talking about, like strategic planning.
So we need to come up with some alternatives to Lisa Springmeyer if in fact she or her firm are not available. Anybody worked with a strategic planner? I have, but not here, so that's not helpful.
She may have a recommendation, a referral, if that's, who they work with.
Utah League of Cities will have people that they recommend also, Mayor. And we used to do a weekend retreat. we do Saturday kind of all day and then Sunday morning. And that was kind of how we did it at post-election in my home in North Carolina.
Yeah, I've done some of those too, Grant. It's kind of like the last person standing at the end of the second day. It's like, I agree. We need a strategic planner. I think the question now is like, how do we find it? The league is a good suggestion. Actually, today at noon, I have the Utah Rural Leadership Academy meeting, and I could toss that out and ask that question. Is anybody using a strategic planner that might be suitable to a town versus the big needs of a city, which are similar but different in scope, certainly. Should I try to do that today? And
Yes.
Write myself a note or I'll never remember.
I think anytime you mention that, it can kind of broadcast from there. They may go home and think about it or come across somebody and let them know that we're looking.
Yeah, that's good. And I'll also, well, actually, two of the people that are on this class are on the Utah League of Cities and Towns board. Logan Munson up in Blanding's on. And one of the other things kind of tying to this long and short-term planning, I think, is there are positions open on the Utah League of Cities and Towns for representatives. they need a couple more board members. Actually, there are several seats open. So if any of you would like to be, referred and recommended, I can certainly do that. It is a time commitment, but it's also really helpful to have this area represented. Logan's doing a really good job of representing this area, but there are seats open if somebody's interested. I'm kind of looking at Luann. Okay. Well, if anyone is, let me know. That I think the application's closed the first part of September. So anything else on that?
Well, I'm wondering, UDB has such a big group of people that back them, and so does Friends of Cedar Mesa. Those might be some sources of people.
That's a good suggestion too. I'll try to make some inquiries this week and see, is everybody willing, if we can find someone and I bring a name back or two, if Lisa can't do it, is everybody willing to be able to commit at least like a day or a day and a half to be able to do this so that we don't have to incur multiple travel costs or time?
Yes.
Sure, and if like Jim said, they go to each individual to figure out the goals of each group, each person, it could be that a lot of this could just be done on these kind of meetings. They can contact each of us separately, and then a group day would, if they need to come in person to see or whatever, but that may be further down the line.
Okay. So moving to the lighting ordinance. So just to recap, we have the two separate issues. We have the ordinance that's in place, and then we have the recommended changes from Dr. Barentine. It looked to me like, reading through the minutes of the joint meeting, that most people were, in terms of the language and the changes of the phrasing, people were in support of that. Was the biggest point of discussion, and since I wasn't available, I'm just throwing it out, was the biggest point whether to extend the time frame for compliance? Was that probably the biggest discussion?
It seemed to me that's the case. And another point of discussion that at least one resident is talking a lot about is the support for of the town for any legal action by a resident.
So I haven't had a chance to talk with Sarah Barak. Both of us have been traveling, and I wanted to respect her vacation time and not be bugging her. But maybe the thing to do is, and I'm just throwing this out, I'm certainly kind of at a loss as to how to approach it, is get the committee together that's going to work on the dark sky application, because we need to get that in, the International Dark Sky one. And have Aaron work with me to make the language changes in the from the recommendations that Dr. Barentine had, and then put this on for a vote and discussion about those 2 points that are contentious. Like, how should we, it's expired now, we could write, into the ordinance that it goes, that if we're done, compliance needs to start occurring and we need to be working with folks, or we give another year, give another 2 years, whatever, and then whether or not that piece of the enforcement stays in as it is now, where both the town and private citizens have this cause of action that they all still have, whether it's in there or not. And do we take that out or leave it in? But Aaron and I worked to kind of go through and make the edits. And would you be okay with that, with helping with that?
That sounds as a good synopsis, and I'd appreciate it if y'all do that, bring it forward.
Yeah.
Erin, are you okay with helping with that?
She's
Sorry,
nodding
yes.
her head. Yeah, and I really appreciate that you got him to do that, to look over our ordinance. And I think that's a big step forward to getting the application in. I don't remember when the deadline for that application before they switch things up, but it seems like we need to focus on that so we don't lose that little window. Do you know when that's due?
Yeah, they'll talk about making changes probably effective January 1, 2023. So we want to get the application, the initial application to them before the end of the year so that we get grandfathered in with the current standards, which is how Dr. Berenstein reviewed the ordinance.
And yeah, and so taking, the on those two issues that are most contentious, I just feel like we need to take their advice. We hired them, they're professionals, they're in it, on both of those issues of, do what he recommends to make the whole thing work in the long run, the big picture. I'm always trying to think big picture of things. Like, let's not cut off our nose for, just let's work with the recommendations from our attorney and from this expert.
Just remember that there was no recommendation on the length of time. 10 years was the maximum you can go for the application. That was not a recommendation. He was silent on the recommendation for the time. And I could be wrong, but I don't recall anything as on a weigh-in on the enforcement piece with the private cause of action. But I'll have to go back and look at that. I'm not.
No, he didn't, but the lawyer had put it in. We had argued about that before, and that's how I came to terms with that, because I wanted to take it out too, but I'm like, well, we need to, if he thinks it needs to be in there, then I feel like we need to take his advice. Let me find, I've got this pulled up. Let me just see what he said about the term.
The term is in an email. Do you have the email where he discussed the term?
I think it was on both, wasn't it?
No, because he did not complete his thoughts in the draft, and I had to ask him to clarify with an additional email.
Okay, let me look real quick here.
Pretty sure. And I don't have that with me, or at least easily with me.
Well, I'm not pulling that up real quick. But anyway, maybe we can find that again. Oh, wait, here we go. I bet this is it. That's not it either. Yeah, I'm not finding his. Let's see.
So what he had put in the draft was the 10-year mark. And so he had started a sentence, if I recall correctly, that had a couple of words and then didn't say anything more. So I asked him for a point of clarification, and he said the maximum that the International Dark Sky application allows for is 10 years for compliance. So it can be anywhere from whatever we decide to 10 years. And so I think people need to think about what they think is permissible in their mind length of time when we get to that.
So we would be a dark sky city provisionally after whatever period of time we decide all the lights would have to be in compliance. That's kind of where I'm interpreting what we're doing here. This is this is us pledging to the dark sky group that we'll have our lights done by this amount of time, but we'll already be designated a dark sky community with that allowance. Is that what you understand, Mayor?
Sort of, but sort of not. If we apply for dark sky designation, with or without complete compliance, the application gets processed and looked at. It's just that we can't have more than a 10-year period for compliance.
That's what I thought. That's what I
Yeah.
thought. So it's a
And
compliance number.
Right. As I understand it from, I think from Sarah Barak and others, that in terms of meeting the requirements for the sky measurements and all of that, we're there. It's a matter of getting it all into the application. And I don't think any of us really want to have two separate documents running, a current ordinance and an ordinance that we have to submit. I mean, we need to have the same ordinance in place that we're submitting with the application, which is why we need to get that.
And that's what I would hope is, as this new language from John comes down, we can codify it and use it for an application and maybe do it all at one time. That's kind of where I'm thinking we're heading, but correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's kind of where we're at. Is everybody good with that, or any other thoughts?
Would it be worth having him come on, or ask Dr. Barentine, just or if you have the clarification, just ask him to re-clarify, just to help us settle?
I can find it, Lou, and send it to everybody again, but it was very clear what he said.
Okay,
If you have other follow-up questions, there's nothing wrong with doing a follow-up with him, but it was very clear what he said about the 10 years.
I really liked all of his other comments. And yeah, and just in your subject, if you'll put Barentine time limit or something so that we can search it. Some of these are hard to search.
I will find it hopefully at some point this week and get it out to everyone.
Okay.
One other thing to think about on that enforcement piece, and we're going to hit it heavy. If we have enforcement and we don't have an enforcement mechanism, we really shouldn't have something that enforces, because right now we're getting that pushback on enforcement for things like the signage, other things. And so we need to look at enforcement. If we're going to keep an enforcement provision in there, such as it is for the private cause of action, then we really need to look at getting enforcement across the board on on everything. I mean, we need an enforcement officer. That's what I'm saying.
Mayor, put that on our long-term strategy, please.
And all of these ordinances, you start with finding out that there's a problem and then sending the letter and saying, hey, did you know we have this ordinance? They either cooperate or they put up a fight, and then it goes to the next step and the next step. Most of them can just be like, hey, these lights need to be shielded. That, did you know that you can't see the bulb? You shouldn't be able to see the bulb, no matter what color they are and whatnot. But, a lot of things like that, you just let them know, hey, you're out in the UDOTs right away, whatever. And most people will say like, ooh, I didn't know. I'm just doing my thing. And that's the end of it. And if it goes on, that's what we have the legal fees for.
Mayor, I had one other thought.
Brian.
I had one other thought about trying to get compliance in our lighting. Any like site plan reviews of anything existing that go through planning and zoning should have kind of a comment about, have you complied with lighting? Just kind of a general process for like redevelopment. So I thought that might be a way to try to, if you had someone redevelop, and you could ask them at that time when you reviewed the site plan for redevelopment to go ahead and comply with this order. It might be, we can put up.
I think that might already be in the land use clearance application.
It absolutely is. They look at all of that, and then there's the that's what they're working on now, is to get a walkthrough at the end before the project is completed, before you get that certificate of occupancy that you've actually done the setbacks, you've done the lighting, all of that's part of that land use clearance. But most of it's turned over to the county, and what they'd like is a final walkthrough from the town, and that's what they're working on now is having. But the lights are totally a part of that.
Fantastic.
And what Lou is describing about sending the letter, we need to have a policy. I'm not going to keep sending letters at the point that there's no compliance. And so we need to figure out, you send one letter, 2 letters, then at the point that you have to enforce it, you go straight to the attorney, or do you have someone internal that we're using for code enforcement? And I think that's what the discussion we need to have. And probably sooner rather than later. I think it's probably a short-term goal, Brant, but thanks for asking on that list.
And just a clarifying thought on that, I don't think you want to, for lack of a better term, stick a neighbor on another neighbor. I don't think that's safe. I don't think it's neighborly. I think it's better coming from either some arrangement with the county sheriff or getting a legal attorney written letter that goes out. I don't think, unless you have somebody in mind that's going to be that Gestapo for town, I don't think that, but we have the agreement with county. So at some point, if you can say, okay, we're going to ask the county to respond to this. And I just think that the attorney letter comes before that, in my opinion, but we can talk about it whenever you're ready to make that as a plan.
I'm actually meeting with a couple of the other mayors to talk about whether we can lock into their enforcement on things. I don't think the San Juan County interlocal agreement is one I want to go back and try to revisit and add to right now. I think it would be best if we talk to places like Blanding and Monticello about how we can tap into enforcement.
Right, and maybe ask them their chain of command or chain of events to get to enforcement and compliance. Like if you say this, you let them know that what point do they turn it over to an attorney, or do they send the mayor down there to talk to them, or what, what happens? That's some of our learning curve that I think we just need to see what some other towns do maybe.
I would just like to ask that we don't characterize the right to civil litigation as a Gestapo tactic. I think those kinds of names are not useful, but there are people that have been trespassed by lighting in this town, and for quite a while. And so if they choose to react to that within their rights, I would hesitate to characterize it like that.
Yeah, sorry. No, I think I miscommunicated that. What I'm saying is, as our town council, to assign it to one of our council members or to somebody in town to say, go to that person, tell them to turn their lights off, or tell them to stop parking in the street, or whatever your complaint is. I don't think that's the route. I think that, yeah, if a neighbor does whatever they're going to do, that's their responsibility. But for us to ask a neighbor or somebody in town to say, hey, you're going to make sure that all of these people are in compliance, I think it's better coming in the mail and email and then going through the lawyer. And then you bring in a deputy or somebody to say, hey, look, you're really knocking the ordinance here. You're out of compliance. You've received this letter. Now you've got the letter from the lawyer. And then you proceed for enforcement past that. But I think having a person contact them is not the way I would do it.
It would be an officer of the town if we sent somebody. It would be a council decision. So it's not like some guy stopping off and saying, hey, turn your lights off. It would be a directed action with council approval with a town official. If we had someone in town, we would hire them, just like we do accountants, just like we do anybody else. If we need a service, we'll find somebody that can provide that service. So it's not like neighbors enforcing this thing. It's going to be a town enforcement.
And like the Blanding, they probably send their deputy over. So our choice is to send the county deputy over
or hire an enforcement officer. There's a couple of options, and we don't need to talk about them this morning.
So I will bring more information back. Linda?
Yeah, I was going to agree with Grant. We're on a tangent now. I just actually sort of missed an important call. So, but I think I think we might be ready to move on.
So I will bring information back on ways we can look at this. So moving real quickly to the last one, which is the protocols. I just wanted to review a couple things because now with Aaron being on board, I want to be sure that we're still, until we make a change, we're still kind of following the same practices we've had for the last 3 or so years. And one of the things that Aaron's been doing is working on policies, which is good because we should be documenting like why we do what we're doing and what the result is we're hoping to achieve. So one is the agenda and setting the meetings. So how we've done it in the past is somebody comes to the council and says, hey, like Molly did, hey, I want to talk about a committee. I want the council to consider it. So then we have that request. Then we usually have it on a work session to discuss it and vet it. And then we have it on another council meeting for a vote. And I think with adding, people and whatever, let's try to stick with that protocol until we get to the point where we need to talk about shifting, like who does the agenda, who does the setting, how does it go out? Because right now we're still, kind of finding our way on the roll now with Aaron in place. And we don't want to overwhelm Aaron, but we also don't want to shift policies right now until we get, a clear path here. And of course, I'm trying to remember what the other two policies were. Aaron, good, thank you.
Oh, I just had a clarifying question. So in putting them on work sessions first, are we then setting the precedent that we will have work sessions every month to discuss these larger items before they go to a regular meeting?
Pretty much what we've done is when we see that we have a need for a work session is when we set it. So we've gone sometimes a whole month without a work session, and sometimes we've had a couple. And I think it's time sensitive more than anything. So like with Molly, that's why you and I were having that conversation about, does it go on a work session first? Does it go on a agenda first? Because I wanted to be sure that we weren't unduly delaying the vote. But since in the work session we can't vote, we've got to have that follow-up meeting. Do you remember the other two policies we talked about?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Aaron.
One of them was just about like committees and either formation of them or how they report back to us.
Thank you. That was the other thing is that, and I think we pretty much addressed it when we were talking with Molly, that there would be an official committee that reports to the council and the council makes the final decision. And that is, also the thing with the design review committee with the CCC, that things get vetted there and then each side goes to the entity for a vote and support. There was a third one, and I'm not. Linda, do you remember?
This may be the third one. Remembering the protocol for Carol, Kathy, and Aaron, they all report to Anne. They don't really report to each other. So let's say does that sound like?
Yeah, and ultimately, it comes back to me to put on the agenda if there are issues on how to do things or questions. I think that as Aaron moves into more defined categories of what she's going to be doing, one of the things that I think clearly we'll want to talk about more or less delegating into the management position is kind of the personnel pieces. The kind of the day-to-day reporting. so that it's not, so that it's more falls in the management and stays more of an institutional piece than falling to me, because even though I look like an institutional piece, I will be moving on at some point. And I think it's important to get those policies, which is the other piece. Aaron and I talked about the policies of, there was one thing we talked about yesterday. I'm working on a policy. I'll remember it and then, or Aaron will. You asked me a question, Aaron, about whether we had a written policy.
I think it was actually for the committees, either the creation of it or, you know, the reporting structure and what needs to be brought back, which, you know, most things need to be brought back to you all as the town council. But I was just asking if there was a written policy, especially as, you know, it seems like there are more and more committees that are probably going to come up to get this work done. We want to make sure that everyone is held to the same standard.
Yeah, that was the third one, and or one of the ones, is that I'd like Aaron to work on a policy that says when we form a committee and we approve a committee, then who's responsible for that committee on the council, and then how is the reporting done, and making sure decisions are made by the council and not by the committee off on its own. Anything else anybody has? Okay, I think if no one has an other, it's 10:50.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Or
Say that again?
motion to adjourn.
Or your second, okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thanks, everyone.
Good work, everybody. Thanks.
Alrighty.